Doing great. Well, and we didn't get much of an introduction to each other, so this is great. You get to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background because, yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there and how it relates to being at Top Green as well. So, um, tell us a bit about your industry experience and how it led you to where you are today.
Yeah, so I mean, I come from the commercial landscape maintenance world where I spent most of my career in production focused roles, everything from project manager to operations manager. So, day to day, my job was really centered around execution, getting the work done, managing
Yeah.
crews, and making sure we delivered on what was sold. I got pulled into production planning pretty naturally. I mean, I worked for a company that was really big on site plans and job scripting. So I ended up doing a lot of manual planning, mapping out how a job should be performed, and then working with multiple teams to actually execute those plans in the field. So, I mean, I think that experience building plans on paper and seeing how they held up in real life was really what kind of translated me from the commercial maintenance world to kind of into this space now.
And who did you work for and where?
Yeah, so I worked with a couple different places, but more recently was Greenscape. They're located in North Carolina. They're a pretty large commercial maintenance company.
Great, great. And so, um, what? So you've come to Top Green, and I think you said 90 days you've been on seat
Yeah, so I mean, since December. So I
since
mean,
December.
it kind of at this point, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell the difference, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
it feels like short, but also feels like forever. It's kind of one of those scenarios.
Well, when you're starting something completely new, why the move, and why are you what are you doing in your role?
Yeah, I mean, really, like, why am I spending my time on this? Some people like say, "What's your mission?" Right? I mean, it
Yeah.
really comes from being in the industry, right? Hearing the same conversations over and over again, right? I'd sit in meetings with sales teams, business development, account managers, and client relations managers, all the sorts, right? And I felt like I'd sit around those tables and everyone had tools, right? Everybody had something, tools to track performance, KPIs. Our branch managers were tracking everything for leadership. Tools to sell better, tools to manage relationships better, tools to just really do their jobs better, right? I mean, like most people have. And I'd kind of laugh to myself, or within our production meetings with our production teams, because when where we actually win and lose every single day within the commercial landscape maintenance space is within our production teams. And again, those were the people that I felt like really needed a tool, and we didn't have
And
those
didn't have
tools.
anything.
Exactly. And so I think that disconnects what kind of drove me. I obviously knew it was there because I was living it and dealing with it every day. But I mean, I believe from the first time I came with Sashi, and those guys. I believe Top Green and specifically Crew Planner really is the first attempt at giving production teams a true tool to win with, right? I mean, something that helps managers make better decisions and lead crews with more consistency. Instead of being completely dependent on experience or reacting in the moment, right? Which is what I feel like most of that is. So I think the mission behind it is to help companies standardize production at scale, right? Not
Hmm.
based on trial and error or learning the hard way, which is what I really think, the industry is built upon. But with a system that gives them confidence, right? And at the end of the day, I want companies to stop feeling stuck or reactive when it comes to production. I think with Crew Planner and Top Green, they can actually take control of the three pillars that I think matter most in this industry, which are safety, quality, and efficiency.
And so, I mean, you said it. You felt the pain of running the plans, the production. Keeping on track, everything. How does Crew Planner actually change that? What does it bring? Because obviously, if you if you've been in it, you know it. But like, explain it to those who haven't seen a demo, who don't know, they're just, um, you know, fighting through and using their experience, like you said, what does it bring to the table?
Yeah, I think, I mean, at a high level, I think this is something that all those pain points that I think if you sat down with any production person that's done it for any time frame, they can speak to a lot of those, right? Those everyday pain points. But I really think with crew level, I mean, crew planner, there really is four big ways that crew planner helps production teams. I think there's a ton of ways that it touches different places. But I think the four biggest is that we deal with in the industry, which is first is crew sizing, right? And the systems helps
Mm,
you figure out the right number of people needed to efficiently process a property, right? Instead of guessing, you're making more of a informed decision about how to staff a job, right? So what I mean by that really is, hey, when we're looking at a property, right, is this more suited for a three-man crew or four-man crew? What is the right amount of labor to actually
mm,
process this property efficiently, right? And then the second is equipment utilization. Anybody that's been in production would probably laugh at this whole thing and wish for years and years they had something like this, where it's the equipment utilization, right? It's what's the right amount of equipment to get this site done, right? Is it two mowers or three? Is it two string trimmers or three? The reason I say that is because I know anybody that's in production that's listening to this right now is having people that come back to them every single day and saying, hey Yates, if you would just give me an extra weeder man or an extra guy or an extra edger, we could get this job done quicker, right? And that's the fight every single day, going on. And so this is an actual system that you can see when in it. Hey, if I add a string trimmer or I add a mower, how efficient more does it make me or less efficient, right? So you can actually
yeah.
see the impact of you trying different solutions as far as equipment. And then third, I think this is what gets everybody going, right, is the system is and closer to actual production, right? So, I mean, traditionally, I give you a scenario of one that I sat in many times where it was, hey, business development or sales team comes back to me and says, hey, Yates, we sold another HOA. It's a large one. We sold it for 40 hours. Here's all the details of the contract, right? Hey, we want you to service on Tuesday. These are what you do within it, all those types of things. And so then it's my job to take that estimate and make a production plan, right?
Mhm.
There's everybody has their own process or ways that they do it, but really at the end of the day, I would look at that and say, okay, that means it's four guys all day. It's going to take four guys all day to do this HOA. And my goal as a production person is instead of letting you work for four guys work for 10 hours, is my goal to get you back at maybe the 8.5 hour mark. You get 36 total hours on site, 4 hours good of gross margin, right? Everybody would pat me on the back and say, hey, Ace, you're doing great. Keep doing what you're doing. Really, what Crew Planner does differently than that, right? Let's not making a plan based on our estimate, but what's the actual amount of production or labor will it take to process this property, right? You sold
Mm,
it for 40, but what if it only takes 32? Or on the other side of the fence, which I think a lot of people can say they've been before, what if it takes 45, right?
yeah,
So,
exactly.
so again, I think that for a lot of people is a big aha for us when they get those insights. Um, but I think ultimately, when we're relying on crew members mostly, right, foremen or whoever it might be, that are hourly workers that are not incentivized for being efficient, right, efficient workers. I think asking them, right, as far as what's the true amount of time it takes to get this job done is not the best way, right? Because that's kind of what we're doing. We're leaving it in their hands and we're saying, hey, here's 40 hours, right? Well,
Yeah.
they're going to probably take as much of the 40 as we possibly can give them, right? Because again, if they left on the 32nd hour instead of the 40th, that's money out of their pocket, right? So,
Well, and
how do
it's
you control
also,
that?
they also are trying to, okay, I have 40 hours, how to do it safely. I think there's
Correct.
so much going into that. Like you said, everybody has different ins incentive incentives to do things differently. Um, I think it's really interesting that it's independent of the estimate because
Yeah.
obviously
So
that's a sales perspective.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
And for me, I mean, like crew planner starts to uncover what it really takes to complete the work, right? It shifts us away from the planning based on estimates, to your point, right? So,
Hmm.
meaning our plan's only ever going to be as good as our estimate is, right? And
Yeah.
really, those fields are completely different: our sales field and our production field, right? And so it's more towards planning based on what actual production needs, right? And I think the fourth big aspect of crew planner, as there is many, but this one is what I think we're learning as we're working with companies and as companies work with us. I think we're learning that this is maybe one of the most important, which is planning for the variability, right? So our
Okay.
industry has a ton of it. I mean, I'll use a simple example. I'm from North Carolina, so everywhere I've worked, edging is typically done biweekly. So that's what it's sold contractually. And so on week one, we can talk about that same 40-hour HOA we were just speaking of. And on week one, I'd send four guys out there, and the fourth guy could spend 6 to 7 hours edging on the first week. Well, on the second week, I'm still sending four guys.
Yeah.
So, what is that fourth crew member doing for 6 to 7 hours that he was edging last week when we don't have to do that service this week, right?
Yeah.
And so I think what I get when I'm talking about the variability like that is that's not a secret, right? Everybody that's in production understands that based on what the season is or what the week is
It's
and
gonna
what
change.
services I
Yeah.
have to provide, it has to change, right? There has to be some variability into there, but how can I put hours behind it? Or how can I put it in front of someone or myself to make it concrete and understand it? How can I
And
plan for,
maybe change the
week
number of
one?
people that go
Exactly,
that week, or
exactly.
the
So
and equipment,
yeah, it's
and who goes in what truck, and like all of that.
and it's very game time decision, right? We don't. You would think that we could sit in the back room and months ahead of time we're trying to plan for all these scenarios, but like that same scenario with variability, what does it look like? You said it from when. Okay, this is a four-man crew, but Yates didn't show up today, so it's three. I don't have anybody to backfill with. So how do we get these properties done with three people, right?
Yeah.
How does that change my hours? How does it change the plan for who does what on site, right? So there's a ton of these variabilities that are out there, and everyone's aware of them, but they've always been reactive. We've never had a way
Yeah.
to be proactive with them, right? So I think we're learning a lot about how variability is key, and it really is huge for someone to utilize to their advantage. Um, and I think that understanding kind of what the industry is doing now, I think that everybody at this point to on a large scale is Aspire or Element, Boss, whatever systems they're using, right? They're
Hmm.
all those types of users with software. And what we're doing now is we're giving them for basically 38 weeks of a growing season or whatever someone's growing season's length is we're giving them the same hours every single day, right? So from week one to
Yeah.
week 38, they pretty much get, let's say, the 40 hours. What we need to understand as people and managers of this industry is that, yes, maybe some weeks you need 40, but some weeks you might need 32, or some weeks you might need 45, right? And
Yeah.
so I think what we've done is
40
we've
is
just
the average, not the
exactly that's
exact.
what an estimate
And
is,
we've been
estimating.
planning on the average and
Correct.
not, which, yeah, you're wasting fuel, you're wasting equipment, like you said, just whether three streamers or two, or but I like how you're explaining it on one job, but for a large company, it- well, any size company, however many trucks you have, how many people you have, how many projects you have, that's changing on a daily, weekly basis, how to manage it all together as well.
Yeah, I mean, and
So,
to your point, it really is daily. I mean, it truly is. Hey, Yates didn't show up today. That's a variability. Hey, it rained last week. We couldn't get to that site, right? So everything's grown twice. We have to cut everything twice. So the plan
yeah,
can't be the same if I have to cut all the turf twice, right? This can't be the
right.
same amount of hours. So all these things we realize, it's not like I'm talking secrets here. And I think the secret is that there is now a way that you can actually plan for it and see it and put it in people's hands to be able to, understand what the expectation is, not on a, just a season, but a week to week basis, on a variability
That's
basis
powerful.
off of what the client needs and what you need for them to provide to that specific client, right? So I think, again, I think, really largely there's a lot of things that crew planner can do, but for me it's really those four things. And I mean, to recap, because we talked about a lot, really those four things is: how many people do I need to do the job, right?
Mm.
What pieces of equipment do I need to be able to produce it, right? What is the actual production needed to complete it? And what's the variability, right? What is it when I need to do everything at the full peak of my growing season versus when I don't really need to edge and looks like all the weeds are taken care of? How do you plan for that, right? And so that's really what I think the four biggest pillars of what crew planner can do for a production team are.
And so, like I said, I haven't used it. So,
Yeah.
sounds like a lot of work to put everything in and get it to that point. Ho can you speak from that point of view? Never used it before. We have 20, 30 trucks,
Yeah.
all these projects, like, do we need to spend 6 months putting in all the data, to do this right for Crew
Right.
Planner? Or
That's a very good point to bring up, and I think that's a lot of, I think that's initially when someone goes to talk to us, that's probably where their head goes, right? Because I mean, I've been in the industry. I can tell you that, these people in it are spread very thin, right? There's people that are wearing a lot of caps. There's people that are being asked and doing things that probably not in a normal industry they would even touch, right? So,
yeah,
our goal is how can we make it as seamless as possible as for you, right? Because obviously we're talking about some change management here. I mean, I don't think that's a secret, but really what it takes for us, what we ask of the companies we work with, all we need from them is to, source their property addresses, right?
okay,
And have a understanding of their estimated hours for their weekly maintenance visits, right? So that comes with your mowing, edging, string trimming, blowing, and weed control. Your main maintenance operations that you have to go do week in, week out. What are your estimated hours? And at first, that is all we need, right? That is
oh,
all.
really?
Yep,
Okay,
that's
and
all we take from you. Again,
how
what
many
we can.
operators, equipment, all that as well, I
And
guess,
so
and
that's more on the back end, right? So when we start working, we can run our initial plans. I think we have, at this point, a pretty good understanding of, lean management and those types of things, of a good style of planning, especially just to show people initially, where we are getting our initial results. And then that's where we work with these production teams, right? And
okay,
that's where we really get that boots on the ground knowledge, right? Hey, an understanding of their equipment suite, understanding of their knowledge of the properties. Hey, Yates, I actually can't get a 36-inch to that fenced in yard, right?
yeah,
We've got to push mow it, or we actually have to string trim because of the topography here, right? That real world knowledge, right, is what we utilize those production teams for. So, but on the front end, I think a lot of people went exactly the route you did, with, wow, this is probably a lot to, get going. And on that end, it's actually the easiest part. The more
okay.
interactive, consultative matter of it is going to come when we really do, have these weekly to bi-weekly meetings with, these production teams, and confirming the plans, and, just making sure that we are utilizing it in the best way possible.
That's great. That's great. And it sounds like, yeah, you're very integrated into the team. And what so what's the biggest like misconception or myth that operators believe about making this schedule and following through with it? I mean, do a lot of people think it just can't be done because there's too many variables, or yeah, what are you surprised about working with these teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot, when you talk about myths, there, I think I'm understanding there is a ton, right? And I think if the question is, I think that everybody in this industry can say if the gap is so obvious, why hasn't the industry solved it? Right? If we're talking about initially all these gaps, right? I don't think the industry has ignored it, right? As far as this gap from our production teams and things like that, knowing the
Mhm.
capacity and those things. I don't think we've ignored it. I think it's been honestly probably it's one of the biggest topics for owners and stakeholders every single year going into their growing season, right? Um,
Mhm.
I think the challenge is it's a really hard problem to solve, right? I don't think we're talking about something that is if you put two people's brains together, you can really fix this thing, right? I think production has always been very individualized, right? Companies rely
Yeah.
heavily on experienced managers, and that's
Okay.
from production managers to operation managers to even your foreman or
Just learn
experienced,
by doing
yeah,
and
crew
learn
members.
by, yeah, which
Yeah,
is not very efficient in any industry.
and it's not, but I mean, you got to, and for this is, so our owners and stakeholders will rely heavily on these managers as far as our production managers. And those guys, those production managers really rely heavily on the foreman and the crew members.
Mhm.
It doesn't change from top down, right? So, I mean, your success ends up depending on people and their experience, their instincts, their decision making, right? And when you start to scale,
Mhm.
that gets even harder, as you alluded to. And this is very hard in any industry. I
Yeah.
mean, and as we've touched on top of that, compensation structures don't always align, right, with what we're trying to
Yeah.
accomplish as stakeholders or owners, right? Which is the goal is maximum efficiency with high quality, but hourly workers aren't always incentivized that way, as we've already kind of discussed. So
It's
I
very
want,
individualized and, yeah, and even I mean, I guess we weren't even talking about the fact that, the sales team, you start with that as an estimate and we try to make that fit.
yeah,
So it's really all these different incentives to do things a certain way,
correct.
almost like you're just cramming, you're making it fit in that box.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I always say this too about the estimate. I said it when I was in the industry. Is even so, even if somebody could wave the magic wand and we could get the perfect estimate to the second every single time, right? As far as all the resources we're using in the industry to try to solve that problem. We talk to a lot of owners and stakeholders that they get super hyper focused on that, and I understand why, right? But this is what I've always said about it: is if you said it takes 32 hours and 15 minutes and 26 seconds to do it, well, guess what? You still got to get someone to produce it to the 23-hour and
Yeah.
15 minutes and 16 seconds, right?
Yeah.
And so again, that's the gap. Is exactly what you're hinting at already. Is that there's a lot of people along the line that, hey, if I'm in sales, I'm incentivized to make the sale. It's not really my job to produce it,
To
right? So
execute. Yeah.
again, we have a lot of people down the chain that you're alluding to. But even without that, say that person is doing it perfect, right? That
Yeah.
doesn't solve our problem of how do we do that in the
How do we
field. Yeah,
replicate it? And well, and there's people retire and they leave or you have new
exactly.
people come in. And so, you know, I guess what I like about, the vision that you're painting with Crew Planner is it gives you put a lot more information in to produce something that is efficient. You're being helped with that efficiency and you're giving everyone in the field a bit more of a steer instead of like just the hours.
Yeah, so
You know,
I think you're saying exactly what I think I always back myself with is when someone looks at this and they're like, how do my guys are going to accept something like this, especially from the format of efficiency, right? So you're
yeah,
telling me I'm trying to tell a 5-year experienced foreman that it doesn't take 25, it takes 20, right? Well,
like how?
actually, what we were doing before is saying, hey, here's 25 hours, figure it out. You
Figure
get
it
it. You
out.
got to figure it out within those 25 hours. And if you do, I'm not going to bother you. You keep on about your business, right? Now with Crew Planner, it's the complete opposite. It's I'm telling you exactly how I expect you to be able to complete this in this many hours, right? So
Yeah, and
it's
maybe you're giving them
coachable.
an extra crew member for
It's
that week,
exactly
and
before it's not coachable, right? That's the as leaders you
mm,
want to coach, right? No matter if you're a stakeholder or an owner to a production manager talking to a foreman, right? Your
yeah,
job is to coach people to success, right? To lead them along their way in the best way possible. And the problem was is it was really hard to do that. It was really hard
mm,
because it was a vicious cycle, like I like to say, which was I'll give you an example of what I would say veteran production person has happened to them many times, which is hey, I'm a production manager and I'm talking to let's call him Matt and I say, hey Matt, I want the client called. I want you to spray all the weeds at this property right today. And he's like, okay, no problem, Yates. And then I tell right before he goes to get in the truck, I say, but be back by 4:30, right? So I told him to do something, and I told him really the only thing to
the
worry
only
about is to be
parameter.
back. The only parameter, correct, is to be
Yeah,
back by 4:30. Well, that vicious cycle could
but then
easily,
he's,
yeah,
oh gosh, now I'm under time pressure. The clock's ticking, maybe well, that's my thing about quality as well. Like, how can you do a quality job if all that you've given them to succeed is an hourly,
exactly.
parameter?
And so it kind of alludes into that, which is okay. All right, he goes and he comes back, or one or two things happen. So he's going to be back by 4:30 because he knows I'm there and I'm going to say something to him if he's not. And
Yeah,
so what one or two things happens is he either was able to complete all the weeds in that time frame or he wasn't, and he had to pull up on them. And so the
yeah,
client's going to call back to me and say, hey, I thought I said get all the weeds done. And you're going to go back to the foreman and you're going to say, hey, why are you being lazy? I told you to get it done. When in reality, you only gave him to 4:30, right? With
yeah,
one backpack sprayer, and there's 12 hours of spraying, and you only gave him 8 hours to do it, right? The
yeah,
problem is not that anyone's lazy or you didn't give him enough
yeah,
time. You just both do not understand exactly what it takes to complete it, right?
yeah,
So meaning we both can be right.
yeah,
Is we
yeah,
can get it done, but I now with Crew Planner can understand that I need two backpack sprayers to get it done in 6 hours
yeah,
if I do want to complete the task, right?
yes,
Before, where it was just this ring around of it's your fault, it's my fault, it's and just finger pointing and really no actionable change. And the only
yeah,
person that is being affected in this entire process is the client's experience, right?
yeah,
And so that vicious cycle, I mean, I get honestly sick thinking about it now just because I know it is happening every single day. Where is it, hey, are you being lazy? Are you using your time wisely? Are you doing a quality job? And really, there wasn't a lot of provable factors into what am I putting in front of you
what's the
to,
data,
yeah, exactly,
what's the task at hand, and how thorough you need to be, and what you need to do this job right.
correct.
Yeah, and it's almost like you're setting the operator up for failure
That's
without
very much
providing
what I
enough
feel like.
information.
I
Yeah.
don't think it's obviously not intentional, but
No, but
you don't understand yourself concretely what this should take, right?
yeah.
You're just using these blanketed amount of hours, right, that you hope have a lot of validity to pressure your guys to fit into a parameter without really a lot of structure as to how you expect them to achieve within that parameter, right?
Yeah. Well, and I also think that, if the operators haven't been to that job site before and you ask them, I mean, I've been in that position. You're like, how long will it take you to do this? And they're like, well, I don't know. I need to go there. I need to look. I need to do this. Where anytime you can apply data and facts in there,
Yes,
it becomes less subjective, less, because one person might be an optimistic person, and one person that you ask might be pessimistic and wants to make sure they, so
Yeah,
there's this
for sure.
subjectivity that you have to, if you start asking all your operators, how long is it going to take to spray the weeds at this property? Well, if you ask five, you'll get five different answers as well. So
Absolutely. If they say the same answer, they it was by accident. It was
it was
completely
my
different. It was, no, I totally agree with that. And I think that's the same to say with very experienced production managers, right? Is I can go into the field as someone that has seen maintenance operations for many years versus someone else who's seen it for many decades. And we can have very completely different opinions about how long something should take, right? Or
yeah.
how it should be processed. And so my
Mhm.
point is there is we can work within the same location at within the same company, and our production looks very different as
Yeah,
far as how we're deciding who's doing what and how it should be processed, right? So forget about
yeah.
at scale, like at 60
Yeah,
different
just
locations. Just
consistency.
think
Yeah.
about in the same place, just different people's
Different
experiences,
crews.
because
Yeah.
again, there's no system to standardize at this point. So it's really just you and what you know, right? So
Well, and I like how, yeah, so you're producing a schedule and a plan, but then by checking the specifics of what's the access like, what's, you're kind of trying to merge that the data-based approach with the experience too, and making sure it's not lost because experience does matter.
oh,
You're
that's
just,
what we're trying to do, or what the system's really doing, is relying on that, right? It is trying to support your experience, right? You have the experience to know that, hey, that this plan's got to change because of this variability. Um, you now have a tool to apply it, right?
yeah.
So again, to your point, it's supporting the experienced people in our industry, as well as very much helping the people who do not have the experience to ask the right
Yeah.
questions yet, right?
I love
Um,
it.
so
Yeah.
I think that's really what the goal is this isn't to replace anyone, right, or anything like that. It is in the more of the way is use your experienced people to the best of your advantage by having a tool for them,
Yeah.
right?
So if we have an operations manager or an owner listening in and going, okay, wow, this sounds like a great tool. What would you want them to know about the tool? Are there, two or three things that you could say about Crew Planner that should stick in their mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously for me, it's how much time you have, because we could sit here and do this a long, long time. But yeah, I mean, for operations managers, right? I mean, I think for me is again, I want to speak to how can this help you, right? Again, we've talked a lot about up to this point, or how are people incentivized, right? Most operations managers are not normally incentivized by better gross margin on properties, right, or something like that, right? But they're responsible solely for the impact of that, right?
Yes.
And so, for an operations manager, how can this help me, right? Is you're dealing with um, all of these problems every single day, regardless, no matter of what state you're in or what exactly. If you are in operations within landscaping,
Any
you're
size company,
any
really.
size company from the million to private equity hundreds of millions. You're dealing
Mhm.
with the same things as we work from one team to the next, right? It
Mhm.
is hilarious the similarities, no matter the scale, right? As you would assume. But I really want to give operation managers the visibility and how the work is actually getting done. Because I think if we were honest with ourselves, if we all met up together at a town point somewhere and we had to be honest, I think especially at scale, you have very little idea about how these properties are getting done and how who's making these decisions, right? When I was in operations,
Yeah.
I always said if I could send you out to a property and you could make zero decisions for me, then I was setting you up for major success and I was being very good at my job. If I
Yeah.
put you out on a site somewhere and you as crew members and foremen had to make a ton of decisions, I didn't set you up for success, right? And so
Mhm.
I want to give operations managers the visibility into how the work is actually getting done, not just the result, right? Not the clocked in to front versus
Yeah,
clocked out
not
time.
just the hours.
No,
Yeah.
not, but I want to give you the how, the crew size, the sequencing, equipment usage, time spent per task, right? Understanding, hey, when I say to go out and blow off all the sidewalks, it's no longer as long as he's walking down the sidewalk with a blower on his back, he's being productive. What does that actually look like? It should take you an
Mm.
hour and 20 minutes to do the sidewalks. That's the
Mm.
expectation, right? And this is exactly how you should do it, right? I'm not just giving you time. I'm telling you, if you do it this way, you should be able to hit, these numbers. I also think that for operation managers, like we talked about, um, variability isn't the problem. Lack of planning for it is, right?
Mm.
I know that all the operators out there are dealing with weather, absentee, people not showing up, not being able to hire people, right? Not having the people out there to hire, having to rely on H2B, right? The
Yeah.
service frequency changes. That's all a part of our job, right? And we have to deal with it. And a lot of time it gives us a lot of stress and makes it really hard on us. What Crew Planner can do is give you the opportunity to plan for all of those realities instead of just reacting to them, right?
Well, and I also think it's probably, it's an ongoing stress all the time, so it must relieve some of the pressure on the operation manager on making better decisions
Correct.
and, just getting through your day easier. Um, so having a plan. Well, love this. This is fantastic. I love that um, you've built a system. You're talking people through it. You're helping them solve these problems. If someone wants to reach out to you and say, get started or at least just maybe see a demo, what's the next step?
Yeah, for us, it's pretty simple. Please visit our website. Right, there's a top green. We have some testimonials, videos, stuff like that on the website. But you can book a demo through there. But also wanted to lean into because I talked a lot about the operations of the world because obviously that's where I come from. But again, the owners and operators out there. Hear a little bit about what exactly, we work with people to this point, and I know this is a very tight knit community. Everybody's always talking about, well, who's using this thing, what's the results, that type of stuff. I think for the owners, understanding that it's easy. I think a lot of times when we speak to them, to really get caught up on the estimate, right? What's my
Mhm.
estimate? I need the most accurate one because if I can win on the estimate format, I won't bid myself out of work, right? I can always win as much work as I need to be and be as profitable as I need to be, right? And we kind of already laughed at that and said, well, even if you do get the perfect estimate, right, you got to have operations that can perform to it. So I think understanding that also with the system with like Crew Planner, being able to identify your bottlenecks are huge, right? And so what I mean is we worked with a
Mm.
company in Texas for 4 years. They had the same estimate for a property. It was 60 plus hours. A large property to most standards. But in 4 years, the guy told me, "Hey, Yates, we've never hit under the estimate or the estimate one time." And so basically, his questioning to me was, "Hey, Yates, tell me how many more hours I need to go back to the client with, right, for us to
Yeah.
be where we need to be." So it was that type of conversation rather than,
Okay.
hey, what can I do on an efficiency? So it was more of, obviously it's got to be my estimate. I've tried multiple different foremen. I've tried multiple different ways in operations to be able to. I've thrown everything I can at this thing, right? And we can't figure it out. Well, I started talking to him. We ran it for him, and we started to see that he had 36 hours of mowing on this site, but he only had two mowers on the site, and he was trying to get it done in one day. So at max, at a 10-hour day, he could get 20 hours of mowing done of his 36 hours, and that's why he was having to go back for a second visit, right?
Oh,
So it
yeah.
wasn't his estimate that had a problem. They didn't understand their bottleneck was. So for what we told him was actually, instead of putting 5 guys on this site for the large portion of 2 days, we'll put 7. So, and the reason for that is to be able to get two trailers on the site, to have four mowers, to be able to get all the mowing done in one day, which allowed him to come under his estimate, right? So a lot of people, I think, get really caught up on that, hey, my estimate isn't
The
where it needs to
hours.
be, but we really have no way of being able to really think about what is bottlenecking this property, or what is keeping us from getting to this estimate, right? It's not always about just the numbers or things. I think that for us, again, I wanted to tell that just as a testimony. I mean, they went that
That's
same,
great.
yeah,
Yeah.
that same company. When we started working with them, they had a property that was, they were spending 210 hours plus a week at, right, and they utilized the planning, and they're now getting that property done in 2 days and about 95 hours, right, instead of the 210.
Wow.
And some people are like, that
That's
is
massive.
absolutely crazy. And again, it's we've seen it go the other way, believe it or not. As far as we people have 210, we're like, yeah, we think you need 300. But so again, I think for us, a lot of the testimonies, we're getting a lot of those right now, as far as people we work with at the beginning of the year, going into the season now, them really seeing the results for being able to plan, right,
Mm.
from week to week like this, and from variability to variability. So,
Well, and it's not just like you said, it's not the low estimates or the high estimates. It messes up the whole plan. It messes up the whole week. It affects the whole company either way. Yeah.
I 100% agree. I think that a lot of people, obviously, it's easy as an owner or whoever to get hyper focused on that huge labor burden that you're spending hundreds of hours at, and you think you're bleeding from, right? I think it's hilarious. We are finding that, 5 to 15 hour estimate, is the ones that you really should pay attention to as well, because you got guys spending 10 hours there, and we're coming up with saying, showing now, hey, with a proper plan, you can get it done in 2.5, right? You're talking about 70% of savings on a site that size, right? So I
Yeah.
think
So it's not just the big jobs,
it's
it's
not just the big
all
ones, right?
jobs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all of them. I mean, I think we talked a little bit about also some of the myths, right?
Hmm.
I think it's one of my favorite things to talk about, because I think I'm getting a little insight to a lot of those now. But we work with a lot of companies that try. I think there's two ways right now, and it's on these. If we possibly can, we're going to utilize the least amount of people, right? Is a theory, to be able to get a property done, right? So if I can get it done with two guys
Yeah.
all day, that's what I'm going to do.
Don't add a third. Yeah.
And yeah, and don't need to add a third. And so we worked with a lot of companies like that, and we actually, there was an example we were working with, and super similar. The guy says, I have no problem with the estimate. We have 26 hours. Two guys get it done in one day. We're spending about 17 hours total labor here. So I mean, they're 9 hours under their estimate. He has no problems with the efficiency. But I asked him. I said, hey, have you ever thought about doing this property with three people? And he said, well, why would I do that, Yates? I'm at 16, 17 hours with two guys. If I added a third one, that would just inch me closer to my estimate, right? I won't be as efficient, and I won't get as much gross margin. And really, I don't think that's a bad theory. And I think a lot of people kind of probably share that theory. But we ran it within Crew Planner, and instead of two guys all day on the property, is what he was doing then, with about 17 hours total time on site. We did it with three guys, and the total time on site's the exact same. Now you just get it done by lunchtime, right? And so
And you
with
fit
the
another
same
job
crew,
in.
yeah, with the same crew, you spend no more money in total labor on that property, right? But
Mhm.
now you understand, I don't have to hire another foreman or buy another truck or another trailer and all the equipment suite. With the same
Mhm.
people I have now, I have the capacity to take on another half day property with the same people I have now, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's a really big value of Crew Planner, right? Is, hey, this is how I operate now, but when what opens my capacity, because as a person in production,
Without
that was
hiring extra, without buying new trucks, all that. And so,
my
yeah,
exactly.
no, that is
That's,
a great example.
I think for someone that's production, heavy like I was, that's really your ultimate goal is capacity, right? We know
Yeah.
we can't, based on when we have to prune this year, go hire 12 more people, right? And so my, and that's kind of the whole goal as crew planner is I think that initially a lot of people are like, looks great for owners and leaders and managers, but how are you ever going to get a crew to buy into something like this? And it's simple. It's what we tell everyone we work with. You take nothing from them. If you pay those guys 45 hours a week now, you continue to pay them 45 hours a week.
Yeah.
My point is these guys, what the goal is not to take hours from them. It is to utilize them in the best way possible. So meaning if we run planning and I say now, hey, instead of 45 hours of maintenance, this guy really has 35. My ask to you would be utilize the same people you have now to go put them on an enhancement crew to go get
Yeah.
70% gross margin, or go plant your flowers, or what we can never get done and have to run overtime for, do the pruning on these sites, right? Really,
Yeah.
like we've talked about, is we rely heavy on H2B, or, really get held hostage by not wanting crew members to jump ship to somewhere else, or foremen and those things. And so it's really, I think one of the biggest things about crew planner for an operations person also is it really helps you identify what's my true capacity, right?
Yeah.
With the people I have now and with the equipment I have at my use, what can I get done, right? And so it really answers a
Without
lot of
guessing,
those. Yeah,
because it's
a lot of
it.
that
We've
guessing.
always guessed. Yeah. We've always guessed.
I agree. I think for me is I get obviously I think everyone can tell I get super passionate about
Yeah.
a whole thing, but
No, but you felt
it's
the
so interesting
pain.
to me, that there really is something out there now to make what I think is one of the harder jobs in the industry to be good at even better at what they do, right? The people that have hung around doing these jobs for 20 plus years, right? For one,
Yeah.
as we know, are on the verge to retire, and so who's going to replace those people? And especially that experience, you're never going to replace them. But again, how do you help
Yeah.
those people that are there, right, already?
And helping those less experienced get on board with
Yeah,
what to do, giving them a roadmap and setting them up for success, giving
yeah.
them the tools to be successful. We haven't been as, you know, we haven't always given them the tools. They've had to figure it out or learn from
I agree.
others.
And I think if everybody says, "Hey, how do we get our multi-branch landscape company like a Chick-fil-A?" Those are high goals, by the way. I'll say that.
Yeah.
Strive for the highest, I guess. But my point is the biggest thing that changes from branch to branch is not even a culture, right? Or anything like that. It's you can have the same logos, same everything, but again, it's how can we standardize the production when we're talking about different foremen, different people involved. The biggest thing that we have to standardize to be a Chick-fil-A and to be able to go in multiple markets and to look anything like something like that is I have to find a way to standardize what we're doing out in the field, right? And that is what I think crew planner does and fits in the seat for a lot of people.
Well, that is a great closing statement for the podcast. It kind of summarized everything that you've talked about in a really good sentence or two. Thank you so much, Yates, for coming on. I, is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to say before we go? Or
A million things, but please come see us. Visit Top Green. Please check us out. We would love to, if anything, see if it's a fit and give you a better idea of what the system looks like. Right? I think
yeah,
there's a lot we haven't touched on, but again, I do appreciate you having me on today and taking the time.
love it. Thanks, Yates. And what we'll do is we'll put a link to Top Green's site um, and put your details as well, so anybody can reach out if you don't mind and hear more about it.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
your
so much. I
time.
appreciate it.
Okay, see you again soon.
Awesome.